Yeah, my name is John Primeau, and I was in the Watchung district from 1998 through this past year, 2023. I started initially as a substitute and heard that they needed to start a baseball team, and that was my in to get in the district. And during that time, there became an opening for a physical education teacher, so I became full-time in the fall of '99. And I taught at both schools. I did physical education, I think it's 5th and 6th grade at Valley View, and I jumped over to Bayberry and taught 3rd grade and came back and finished the day at Valley View. But I also was an 8th grade math teacher. Back in those days, you didn't have to be highly qualified, so I did a little bit of everything in the district. Well, the subject, that's what I went to college for, was physical education. That was my interest. And the district, it was basically opportunity. There was a need for substitutes because this thing called computers was coming into the district, and they had to have a lot of training for teachers. So then there was a big need for substitutes, and that's how I got my foot in the door. And then they mentioned about the baseball team, and they wanted to get started, and that was right up my alley. So that's basically how I got started in the district. Well, the hiring process, I don't know if you remember her, but Patty Puglisi worked at Bayberry. She was the main secretary, and I had worked for her husband running a health club for a number of years. So that was a connection as they were looking for substitutes, and that was the initial connection. And then once I was at Valley View, Mr. Murphy and I became connected, and he kind of encouraged me to get in there full time because it was a need. So I got to give him credit for also getting into the district. It's hard. There's so many things, but there's many huge experiences. One that hits me right off the bat was when we were at school during 9/11. And I remember I was in the old gym, and the library was across the hall, and the librarian had mentioned something about the towers. And at the time, I thought just a stray plane hit it. And then once the reality sunk in, it still amazes me today how everybody just silently fell into place, and we got the children gathered, got everybody home on a different schedule, not knowing what fate anybody had in front of them. So I'll never forget that moment. Then you come forward to the pandemic and how we had to deal with that. So there's a lot of those memories, but there's also a lot of positive, great memories, especially when I see the students when they've grown up and become, following their dreams. That's what makes me happy. It's hard to have one memory, but there's one that comes, a lot of you probably don't know the old layout of Bayberry, but it used to be the playground was in the front of the school, and it was a large flat plane. There was no retention basis. And we were on the playground at that time, and somebody kicked the ball, was rolling towards the street. If it made it to the street, it was gonna go all the way down to Valley Road. So I started running after it, and then I realized I gotta sprint. And as I was sprinting, a student, I don't know if you know Ronnie Rowe, yelled out, "Run, Forrest, run." I started cracking up. I mean, I got the ball, but I always remember that, comedy is timing, and he did it perfect at that moment. So that's one thing that I always remember. Well, the challenges is to deal with each student individually, which is hard because you're dealing with masses, and especially lately, the past few years, the numbers have gotten greater and greater. I think that is the biggest challenge of the job because every student is different. And understanding that and having realistic expectations and so forth, that was the biggest challenge. Well, one I already mentioned was the introduction of the computer to the district. And then again, with 9/11, the changes of security. People could walk in and out and one school to another, no big deal. And another change, again, I guess with security, is I remember the days when we would just have the students run from, not the baseball team would run from the school out to the field, through the neighborhoods. It was safe. It was, neighbors looked out for them. It was kind of a nice thing. You don't always notice how it changes you because you develop relationships and the good positive experiences. But the one thing I can take from it is you get a feeling of the community as one big family. And you kind of get part of that because you see the family, all the different ages of the family. So I guess that was the biggest effect. The Mountaineers. A lot of people don't know that. The Mounties, I remember the one year they wanted to be called Mounties or Mountaineers. And I don't know why that name has been promoted more. Yes, there was one time I had a van at that time, and I would pop open the back of the van and tell everybody just to pile the stuff in there, run to the field. I'd meet them down there. And this was the second year of the program. Keith Serrano was kind of like an assistant coach with me. And we're riding down in the van, and we're just talking, and he writes on the notepad, he goes, "Eric Michelson is underneath all the equipment in the back." I see that, and I nod to him, and as we're going, I said, "You know, we gotta do some cuts. And that Michelson kid, I don't think he's gonna make it." So, but, you know, we all had a good laugh. We got in there, and then it became a tradition where it'd be, I don't know who, people would be stuck in there. And it was just a harmless prank, but I always view it as a team bonding type of thing, and it became a tradition. Again, that's one thing, I don't know if it could happen again today. It was pure innocence. Nobody got hurt. Nobody was forced to do it. People volunteered, wanted to do it. So that's a good memory. It is. That goes all the way back to youth. Because I remember, my first memories, it was the Maris and Mantle home run race. And I remember my aunt saying something on television, "Who got one today?" And I played as a younger, you know, that was my sport type of thing. And like I said, at college, I had worked with it and coached also. And that was my in here. So, and now with the Patriots, I guess if you're a Yankee fan, this is kind of like the ultimate dream, because I can technically say I work kind of for the Yankees now, you know, that type of thing. Not to fear failure. I think the biggest thing that stops people from going for it is fear of failure, and understand that you're going to fail numerous times before you succeed. And if you really believe in it, stick with it, and perseverance. I think perseverance is something that, I don't say it's being lost, but we're in an instant society. So if they can maintain that perseverance and stay with it and believe in themselves and don't fear the failure, you'll get there. Other than when you see me, make sure you introduce yourself, because I remember most of you as being this tall, and I don't, you know, I'll remember you once you say it. You might remember me, but other than that, because I've seen them at the Patriots and so forth, it's great to see them. But just do that and I'll be happy. Thank you.